Hello, racing fans, and welcome back to Race in Review, the F1 podcast, bringing you all things sim racing, but especially Formula One discussions. My name is John, and I'm joined by the man with the best hair in the business. It's none other than James Hazel. Hi, James.
Hello, how's it going?
Are you awake yet?
Ish.
Ish. Yes, because we are talking about the Monaco Grand Prix, or as they like to call it, the most expensive traffic jam in history.
Yeah.
Oh, James, shall we just dive into it?
Yeah, let's just go with it, yeah.
That we'll do this differently, right? Normally I play a tune, now I'll do a statement. So that was a tune. I'll do one more just to make sure the volume is all right. And that's how
There it
loud they
is.
sound in Monaco. James,
Yeah.
2 mandatory pit stops didn't bring us a race. It brought us a contest of who can drive the most slowly.
Yeah, that was unfortunate.
That's one nice way of saying it.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, I, I want to say that at least they tried something, and trying something is better than nothing, but it didn't work. You and probably other people were predicting that maybe teams would just do both their pit stops under a single safety car or virtual safety car if it happened. And then the
Which
way
would have
the race.
happened if Gasly didn't park his car in front of the Williams box, probably.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. Well, he should have parked it straight on at the bottom of the hill instead of driving all the way around the circuit. I think they were told not to do that. So that was a bit naughty of him. I don't know if he got a
No, I want to
reprimand or
talk about
anything.
Gasly separately because he said some things which I really think it's worth discussing. But
Yeah.
James, this Grand Prix, we got 2 mandatory pit stops, and basically, when you looked at qualifying, that meant that the number one driver of each team, or the number two driver of each team, would just drive as slowly as possible to make sure his pit or his team member could get a free pit stop,
Yeah.
which was, well, when I saw the Mercedes, when I saw the Williams, when I saw the Ferraris behind each other, and of course what Piastri did with Lando in front and Max behind him. It's just stall time, make sure there's enough gap, the 20 seconds plus for the pit stop, make sure your teammate pits, then you do a couple of fast laps and do the same basically. Because the gap behind you will be so big that you could probably do. So the top four were sort of deadlocked in until everyone else made the stops, but they did exactly the same.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, this goes, in my honest opinion, before we discuss like the specific topics, against everything racing stands for.
It pretty much does. I mean, driving a little bit slowly to preserve tires and stuff, that's part of racing, but especially the way, I mean,
Williams
it's
was
all
7 seconds a lot slower than the top.
yeah, it's all within the confines of the rules, so you can't really kind of punish anybody for this, or I don't know. They're just gaming the system, is how it feels. And it was the racing balls in particular that absolutely nailed that, wasn't it? Because it was loss and holding up to allow Hadjar to basically do 2 pit stops for free,
Yeah.
not lose a position for either of them. He started on the mediums, I believe. He moved on to the softs for about 3 laps, and then after that, he pitted again onto the hards for the rest of the race. He then tried to help his teammate Lawson. Um, the entire race was like that for all the teams, apart from one team that you mentioned, which was Mercedes, because Mercedes seemed to forget that they had a mandatory 2 pit stops in the race and seemed to forget that they were at Monaco because they were driving as if they were going to overtake, and then eventually they did by cutting a corner, which I'm sure we're going to get into that properly in a minute, so I won't go too deep into that right now. But yeah, the drivers at the top were quite as bad with that, but they were still so far off like what you'd expect the pace to be at Monaco. And then even though they're driving slowly, the cars behind are driving even slower. And if if um, if this sport is sometimes compared to chess, sometimes when they talk about, I don't know if your commentary makes this like comparison, but certainly in the UK, or the British commentary, they talk about like, oh, it's like a game of chess sometimes when they're talking about doing all the pit stops and stuff. This was like a game of chess from the early 1900s or 1800s with your pen pal, where you're sending your moves by post back and forth to each other, because it was the slowest and most bizarre game of chess I've ever seen, if we're making that analogy. But it's just it just didn't work basically, and they can't try and do this again next year. It was better last year, even though there was probably less action last year, by just letting the race pan out as it does naturally. At least it was easier to follow last year. This year it was crazy trying to keep up with who'd stopped, where people were, where they were going to come out.
Graphics were good though this weekend. Like
Yeah, the graphics were good. Yeah,
they made good graphics for it. Yeah,
especially like the wall measuring camera. And then
too close.
if somebody touched the wall, it was too close to the wall, or whatever it said. Yeah, but yeah, the certainly the international slash British Sky Sports commentary was just absolutely awful this weekend for trying to keep track of who was where and who was doing what. At one point in the second half of the race, when Piastri had made his second pit stop, they thought that he'd come out behind. It might have been a Haas and a Sauber, and thought that he was driving and was having to overtake them for position when they were 2 laps down on him or something ridiculous. Yeah. So there was just a lot of confusion in general. The race just.
I think it's safe to say the 2 mandatory pit stop didn't work.
No. I think the only way to make a 2-stop strategy or 2 stops at Monaco work is for the tyres to actually require those 2 stops.
It's new asphalt they laid as well, so that's not going to happen either.
Yeah, I mean, the soft tyre was pretty rubbish, wasn't it? But
even then, Max's tyres were dead. Like he said, on a regular track it would have blown.
Oh yeah,
but doesn't really matter on Monaco. He said, so I'll just keep driving.
Monaco's a track where you can be so much slower than everybody else, but still not give them an opportunity to overtake. Because, I mean, they were saying that the estimate to be able to make an overtake there was that you'd need to be around 3 seconds a lap faster than the car in front. So
yeah, but that's if that car in front is not able to be any faster. But now the cars in front were maybe 3 seconds a lap slower. But if they did hit the accelerator, they would be on the same time, which still means you can't overtake. So
yeah. So they could just, and this is what they do, they just drive slow where there is no opportunity to overtake.
No, they go fast in the tunnel and then they slow down again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think
Sainz went in for a pit stop. Sainz had that free pit stop, so he had a fast lap going in. In that fast lap, he was 6 seconds faster than the lap he drove before, and then he went back to regular pace.
Yeah. And then Albon did similar for him as well, didn't he? And it was just, it was just, I don't know.
Here we go. Is Monaco a bad racetrack, or is Monaco a bad racetrack for F1?
It's a bad racetrack for F1. I think Formula E made a post on social media bragging about how many overtakes they get in a race, even at Monaco.
Smaller cars with far higher acceleration and lower top speed, so plenty of time to get.
They've got like the overtake laps or something and stuff, haven't they? Which I don't follow Formula E, so I don't know it well enough. But I know that they've got effectively like some sort of boost that they can do to go faster for a lap or two, and I suppose it might be like deploying the battery in Formula One to some extent. But yeah, the problem with Formula One, the cars are just too big. The sport has outgrown the track. It's the same problem we have at some other tracks that have become less of overtaking tracks, like Imola last weekend.
What a great comparison, because Imola is getting axed.
Yeah, but Imola is not really an overtaking track anymore, and it's not that it's a bad track. It's just that it's a bad track for modern Formula
So is
One.
Suzuka.
Yeah, and the biggest problem for Formula One is that it's too fast. And it's not just the top speeds, it's how fast everything happens. It's how fast the cars accelerate. It's how fast they brake. Like the braking zones might be like 100 or 150 meters, but it's the time spent on the brakes. It's such a small amount of time that, if somebody's spending, for example, I don't know, 7/10 of a second on the brakes to get in a braking zone, someone to be able to overtake them probably needs to be at least 2/10 quicker on the brakes, or spending 2/10,
Yeah.
two fewer tenths on the brake.
I saw a comparison this weekend that a Ferrari 296, so that's a fast GT3 car Ferrari,
Yeah,
on top speed, when you hit the brake fully, takes more time to decelerate to a full stop than a Formula One car does on top speed when even they release the gas.
yeah,
So when release the throttle, a Formula One car brakes faster on their engine than a
yeah.
Ferrari 296 does when you hit the brake full stop on top speed.
Yeah, it's the engine and the drag, isn't it, from the aerodynamics? But that's the problem with Formula One. It's so modern and so fast that that's
Basically, you
what's
need wide tracks, and there's plenty of wide tracks, James. I mean, I wasn't a fan of Las Vegas, but it is a perfect Formula One track.
yeah,
And the issue is here. I love Monaco. Honestly, the qualification Saturday might be one of the best qualifications we've seen in ages. Formula One on Saturday
yeah,
in Monaco, it's absolutely amazing. Then I see Porsche Cup. Then I see the Formula One Academy. Then I see the GT3. It's actually really good driving in Monaco. It's a really
yeah.
nice track. There's plenty of overtakes. Like you said, the cars are too big, too wide for Formula One. Plus, you can't really get too close anymore, which makes sure this track just isn't fit for Formula One anymore.
No,
If you're
it's
talking
not.
about a sprint, that's the next thing they'll be introducing. I'm almost certain is a sprint weekend in Monaco. It doesn't make sense. Just do a qualification, give half points, move on to next weekend. And if you want to keep Monaco on track,
If they do a sprint at Monaco, that would be the most brain dead move they could come up
well,
with.
I've seen brain dead moves this weekend from certain
Yeah,
people and
well, there has
FIA
been some.
control. So,
Yeah, but that would be the most pointless sprint race on the calendar if they did one there. And a lot of the sprint races are fairly pointless already.
but we agree that the track is actually pretty cool, but it's just not for everyone anymore, right?
I like the track, I do, but Formula One is too big and too fast for it. And this is becoming a problem really with a lot of this desire to visit street circuits and race in cities.
And Jeddah is a cool overtaking circuit once again.
Jeddah is good, to be fair, but it does feel like, although it's a street circuit, it feels
it
like
is
it's
built for Formula One. That is the thing.
yeah,
the thing.
it's a race circuit that just happens to then get used as a road because some of those corners make no sense otherwise. And yeah, it's all basically pre-designed for it. Like, it's very wide, it's very flowing. It's good for Formula One. But yeah, I suppose even Miami is okay for Formula One and Las Vegas, but like Baku, you only
Same
really have
issue.
that one overtaking spot at the end of the main straight, and it's difficult for them to get the DRS right because if you allow it too early, it's way too powerful.
Easy. Yeah.
Too late.
Last year they was too late and no overtakes.
Yeah, so it's
Well, yeah. The thing is, James, there's been much complaints this weekend about Monaco, and I just want to make that distinction, at least from my take that I think Monaco isn't a bad racetrack. It's just not properly. It's not good enough for Formula One. It doesn't mean anything. Ferrari's back. Some people said, are they though? They're good on this track, and you can't overtake on this track. I don't. It does. It doesn't mean anything. Max is washed again, coming in fourth, by the way. But
Yeah.
is that true? We'll know after Spain. If McLaren is too strong. No, they had like Lando had a perfect qualification, like absolutely bloody brilliant.
Yeah.
And they didn't push the tactics this weekend, so he was able to be able to hold on. Perfectly well done. But these aren't the hard strategy calls. These aren't the most technical races. These aren't the most. I mean, Hajar said in the interview, we're talking about a rookie here, right? Awesome rookie, nonetheless.
Yeah.
We're talking about a rookie. He said, sometimes I did a fast lap in between because else I was afraid I would fall asleep.
Yeah.
If a rookie makes this comment, you should be looking at the sport itself and saying, you know what, this track, maybe we should can it. And I saw some suggestion track layouts, different whatever. Let's just put them all in go-karts and go 20 laps.
Yeah.
We'll see some bloody amazing racing here.
Yeah, it'd be awesome, that. But it's, yeah.
And people say, yeah, but there's one mistake puts you in the wall. We're still talking about the 20 best drivers in the world. These guys don't easily make these mistakes. And especially when they go slower, when they're not on the edge, they won't put a car into the wall. They just didn't. Or someone did, but that's part of another topic, namely Pierre Gasly. He's blaming Yuki Tsunoda for the crash.
Yeah. He seems to think Tsunoda was braking maybe a little bit too early, wasn't he? And what did he think he was drifting a little bit as well towards the barrier as he was braking? I don't know, but yeah.
Problem is he was trying to overtake there. You can't overtake there.
You can't overtake there, not on the outside. But Gasly seems to be adamant that it was anyone's fault but his own, and that's been basically what he's been saying ever since. Not very good look for him, I don't think. Just hold your hands up and admit that you made a mistake there. It was a silly mistake. I think what was most problematic about that was that he then chose to drive all the way around the track, especially when he realised at a point that he had no brakes. Like, what if a car's going to get past him because he's such a slow-moving vehicle that they're allowed to, and then he finds that he doesn't have the brakes to get around a corner very well and ends up wiping somebody else out like that. That could have been really stupid. And then obviously the problem in the pits when he goes to retire the car and he can't stop the car and ends up blocking the Williams garage. What if he'd driven into somebody? And the pit lane's obviously busy because everyone's expecting there might be a safety car.
What is he thinking here? So he crashes his car, suspension just snapped off. He wouldn't know that, right?
Yeah, there's
what's the point of going back into the pits? Are you thinking maybe they will repair it or something? You could drive it on 2.5 wheels.
It's not going to happen. It's ridiculous. Where that crash happened, he literally could have just gone straight on down the service road at the bottom of the hill, and they could have just crane lifted the car out. Who was it who parked in there?
It was Alonso. Went late.
Yeah, Alonso did that. Yeah, and they just lift the car out, and then you're good to go again.
And you have the straight where he hit and you go straight on from the chicane out of the tunnel.
Yeah,
there's also a parking place there.
Yeah,
which there's one place to do it. You can park it when you go straight. You go to the next chicane. You can also go straight like Alonso did just before the pit lane. I mean, honestly, I am still a firm believer he should actually get a penalty for this.
I agree. At the bottom, where I'm thinking is at the bottom of the hill out of the tunnel, because that's where the contact happened. Yep. And if he'd have just gone straight on there, Like, there's a big run off there for if anyone's brakes fails or anything. He could have just gone off, just gone and parked it there. Or maybe not parked it. It might have been a bit of a slight punt into the wall, maybe with his lack of brakes. But he didn't know that at the time, did he? So, but I agree. He should have got a penalty, or a reprimand, or a fine, or something. Because I'm sure it was said that if you've got that sort of problem with it, or you've got a problem with your car, you're not to drive it around the circuit like that and just basically potentially discard carbon fibre everywhere, because it's such a problem at Monaco for punctures and things, and such a big cleanup operation. If a car goes all the way around the track, like just flinging off bits of carbon fibre everywhere. So it was a silly move. It should have been punished. And it was a bit silly of Pierre to be ranting and going on that it was everybody else's fault. Not a good look for him when he's had such a good run at the start of this season so far. He's maybe just frustrated, and I get that, but yeah.
Talk about frustration. The Williams drivers, because of their, I think, amazingly executed strategy, not saying it's really brilliant for the sport, but it is very good strategy and teamwork, both drivers scored points in favor of the Mercedes. One of the Mercedes, of course, later had some technical issues, but generally speaking, they were keeping the Mercedes behind them. The Mercedes drivers were extremely frustrated, namely Mr. George Russell.
Yes.
And there was something in the driver briefing that says if you overtake after the tunnel over the chicane by going straight on, you have to give the position back before the next corner.
Yeah,
Else,
pretty much
it says
yeah.
stop and go penalty. It said so in the briefing meeting,
Yeah.
in the driver's briefing.
Mm-hmm.
George Russell suddenly thinks, you know what? I accidentally avoided him because he was driving erratic,
yeah,
which
is
is
what he said. Yeah.
PS. He goes straight. He says, "I'll take the penalty." Did he forget he's actually the president? I think of this driver briefing thingy.
Well, as the president of the Drivers Association, yeah.
Yeah. So he is like almost obliged to be at the meeting. I think everyone is obliged to be at the meeting.
Yeah.
Did he forget that it was the case, or people? I mean, I read later that it was on the briefing, right? Mm-hmm. Normally, this is a 5 seconds penalty. But for this track, especially, they say if you do this stop and go penalty. There's many fans that say he shouldn't have gotten a stop and go. I mean, it was in the briefing, but we can't also expect everyone to read the briefings or be aware of the briefings.
What? Why would they not be? Surely that's an expectation of a driver at an event to read the event notes, briefings.
Yeah, so I think Russell should know. Can't be surprised about the penalty. I don't think he exactly is. But do you think F1 did a good enough job explaining why this was a stop and go and not to keep the fan base a little less on their toes? They should be, I've said it before, these special rules in front of a track should be explained before a race starts, right? In this weekend, if you go over the line 5 times, you get a penalty. In this weekend, if you go straight after the tunnel, don't give it back. It's a stop and go.
We have touched on this before, haven't we? About how they don't necessarily give the audience the information they might need.
Exactly. Als nerds knew, but
yeah,
I've heard even commentators say this should normally be a 5 second penalty.
Well, yes, but 5 seconds is the normal penalty, but that is not. Well, it's normal as in that's what's normally given, but that is not the only penalty available to the stewards for that kind of incident at any event. So if that happened anywhere, somebody cuts a corner and gains an advantage of it, they don't have to just give a 5 second penalty. That's not like the set in stone only penalty for that. 5 seconds is what's normally given. Almost regularly given, but it's not the only penalty, and it can be a 5 second penalty, a 10 second penalty, a drive-through penalty, or a stop and go penalty. They are the options available to the to the stewards, and the penalty would be given based on the circumstances of the infringement, I suppose. And they did say after the race that part of their reasoning was what Russell said on the radio, and that he would just take the penalty then.
Yeah, although he would have gotten anyways because it was still in the briefing notes.
Yeah, but I think I think that's a good thing. I mean, okay, so the first thing that's going to come from this is that drivers are now going to be aware not to say, "I'll just take the penalty." They would probably then have to just argue or try and argue, well, I should be in front. But I like the idea of the stewards getting a bit stricter with this. I want the stewards to do this more frequently, because it was only last season and the season before where people were going off track, gaining an advantage, getting a position by going off track, and then just deciding, well, I won't give the penalty back, the position back, because I'll get a 5-second penalty. But 5 seconds isn't going to mean anything because within 2 laps I'm going to be 7 seconds down the road or whatever it happens to be. So 5 seconds was never enough. The drivers complained that it wasn't enough because this was happening. George Russell, as the chairman of the Drivers Association, of all the people, should know this because he's one of the people that effectively negotiates these sort of rule changes or guidelines that the stewards follows. So for him to be surprised,
it was acting. He couldn't be.
He maybe wasn't surprised, no, but he maybe didn't expect to get more than 5 seconds because he would have given the position back, surely. And if he had, he would have been in 10th place because he was behind Albon, between Albon and Sainz.
Yeah.
So he cost.
Well, they still had to make 2 pit stops.
Oh. Well, they did still have to make 2 pit stops, but all you have to do was the same strategy that Mercedes.
That's my other point.
Williams did.
Mercedes was falling asleep at the pit wall. They didn't pit until, I don't know, lap 40 something.
50 something.
50 something, yeah.
It was right near the end of the race. It was ridiculous.
It was ridiculous. Why didn't the Mercedes boys at least take the same playbook as Williams, for example, and one drove slowly, the other one goes in for the pit stop and the other way around?
Why didn't they undercut? If the pace was so slow, why didn't they undercut into free air?
Because Yuki was behind them, so that's why you want to have one to it. But so Russell was in front of Kimi. If Russell just slows down, or if Kimi just slows down, Russell can take a free pit stop. They do the switcheroo, and they do the other way around.
Yeah.
Then you still have an option. At least you have a fighting chance. I felt there's 2 things which really bothered me. One, Mercedes not doing anything and just waiting it out. Which, if you look at Max Verstappen, that made sense because he would be 4th. If something happens, he might be 3rd with a safety car and a quick pit stop, for example. If not, he's still 4th. I'm like, makes sense. Mercedes wasn't in the points, so you got to try something.
Yeah.
And what I really didn't like, my second point is that Williams offered an apologies, 1 to Mercedes for doing these tactics, and 2 to all the fans for doing these tactics. It's not the team's fault. It's not the players' fault. This is a Formula One. This is the organization's fault of having a track like this in this current era of thing. And they just they made the most. Some people say they exploited rules. No, they did. Points for Williams is crucial. Points for any team is crucial. But if Williams can score points, they'll have to do everything. Racing Bull did a perfect job here. Williams did a perfect job here. Is it the most nice to watch? Nope, definitely not. But can we blame them, or should they apologize for taking these tactics up to get some points here? I absolutely don't think so.
No, I agree. You can't. Williams were just playing the game based on the rules and the situation that they were given by the sport for that event, and the rules and the situation given to them was that you need to make 2 pit stops, even if that's not an optimal strategy because the tyres are capable of a 1 stop. And they weren't even the first team to do it. They ended up copying it because it was the Racing Bulls that did it first,
Yeah.
and then they
And then
decided to
Piastri
copy.
was like, you know what? This actually makes sense. Let's.
Yeah, and then Williams just did the same as Racing Bulls. So they're all
Except
playing.
Williams also swapped both cars around to do it.
They did at the end, yeah, or not at the end, before it got to the end. But yeah, Carlos was cheeky there because he was like, "Oh, we'll do it on the last lap." But what if you end up with a safety car 2 laps before the
That's
end?
why they wanted to do it straight away from Williams, which was
Exactly.
smart.
Yeah, and
I can't blame Carlos either for trying that.
You can't, but it was still a bit, yeah. Yeah, there was no reason to leave it until the end. It's not like they were in danger, but yeah, it you can't blame the teams for coming up with the optimal way to do a race and maximise their points. And Racing Bull, they got a great points haul compared to Williams.
6 and 8.
Yeah, where Williams only scored 6 total. No, not even that. Sorry, Williams only scored 3. So
I said 6 and 8, but of course they scored 8 and 4 points, so 12 points.
yes, 8 and 4. Yeah, Williams only got 3 in total.
Yes.
Haas got 6.
Yes.
With Ocon. And this is all stuff we were talking about last weekend. Like Williams are looking good, but it can be very swingy in that kind of midfield.
Well, especially if Mercedes starts dropping the ball twice in a row now.
Yeah, and that was a great result for the Racing Bulls and their Constructors' Championship positionings. So so you can't blame the teams for trying to maximise. Is all I'm getting at here, and Racing Bulls especially maximise they did because they got an amazing result with the opportunity that was given to them. And yes, they played the game to do it, but that's basically what
12 points for Red Bull and 12 points
for
Racing Bull. So
yeah,
James, do you think Mercedes? Last week they introduced a technical directive before Spain, another way of checking the wings. Yeah. Do you think that might have hurt Mercedes? Because last week looked properly poor. This weekend looked really poor.
Well,
we'll find out in Spain since the other directive, like the rule change actually coming in. But it's a bit disappointing because they did look good before this triple header came up. And now they're dropping points left and right. Of course, Kimi not finishing, it hurts him, but he was already out of the points anyways. Russell not, but we said missed the consistency, getting third. Now he's 7th and out of the points. So,
yeah. I think Antonelli just struggled all weekend. That was disappointing to see because I do quite like him. I find him quite exciting to watch. But he had a disappointing weekend for the whole weekend, not just the race. Like his qualifying obviously was poor. And his free practice sessions he wasn't looking great. Well, in qualifying he hit the wall, didn't he? That was his problem. Yeah. Russell, not quite so much. Russell didn't look too bad in practice, and if it wasn't for the car failing, which isn't necessarily his fault,
nope.
I think he would have had a much better qualifying result, obviously, and that would have led to a better race. So, I think to call Mercedes out as kind of being done, or certainly like ruined by this tweak to the rule change before the tweak that happens in Spain. I'm not so sure. I mean, we talked about it last week in our previous podcast in the run-up to Monaco that it's such an outlier of a track that you can't really read too much into results or anything because it's so different to any other track. They bring very specific parts or adjustments to the car and setup. So, Yeah, it was a weekend to forget for Mercedes. Maybe they'll bounce back. We'll have a better idea of where everybody is for at least the next, I don't know, like third of the season, because there will be development still happening during this season. But certainly for the coming races, when we see them in Spain.
Definitely. Well, I'm looking forward to Spain. If you look at the drivers constructors now, currently, of course, McLaren is all but won it already. But Mercedes is 147, Red Bull is on 143, Ferrari is on 142. Of course, Red Bull having just one race in the one horse in the race with Max
Yeah,
Verstappen, but still that is extremely close now.
it is. Yeah, and I think Red Bull and Mercedes. Well, it depends how Mercedes do for the rest of the season, obviously, and you could say that about any of the teams and their positions in the championship. But I think Mercedes overall has the better driver lineup for points, because while Max is clearly the best driver on the grid at the moment, Yuki or whoever has
Isn't.
been in the second seat this season has not been consistent, or at least not been consistently good. So they are effectively driving with or racing with one hand tied behind their
Well, from the
back.
147 points, 136, all but 11 are scored by Max.
Exactly. So you just pointed out that the Racing Bulls equaled the Red Bulls points haul for this weekend. Well, Max finished fourth by himself, scoring 12 points. And the Racing Bulls finished sixth and
Yeah, so 8 plus
eighth.
4, yeah. 12 and 12.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can still
So,
do maths, luckily. That still works.
yeah. So Mercedes don't need to beat Max. They just need to consistently have both cars
True. That's a fair point.
somewhere good in the points. And it's the same with Ferrari. Can Ferrari do it? Not so sure. But
Ah,
so
this weekend isn't representative, but they're not gonna win a race soon, is my guess. But both cars are like 2 spots between. They get fourth and sixth, fifth and seventh, but and then get a good haul somewhere like this weekend to second and fifth.
second and fifth,
You know
yeah, pretty good.
that
Really
will
for them.
definitely help. So I'm still
Yeah,
thinking Red Bull will drop off. I'm curious about Mercedes, which is something we should see this weekend. I think this weekend shows a little bit more how these cars actually align. And if McLaren doesn't run away this weekend, then I'm pretty certain I can safely predict that it's game over on both sides of the fight. But
yeah. I'm not sure about McLaren. The problem, well, not problem. So Red Bull definitely brought something to Imola that helped. If that consistently helps, then I think Red Bull, certainly Max, is going to be in it for the season. Because Imola looked like a track that, on paper, McLaren, certainly earlier in the season, you would predict or expect them to do very
yeah,
well at. Max
I'll
Max
try to reframe.
drove better and effectively had the better car there that weekend. So
Yeah, but here's the
it's
thing:
gonna swing. It's gonna swing back and forth.
this Red Bull has extremely good tracks and some poor tracks. Then
Yeah,
McLaren doesn't have poor tracks.
not particularly. No.
And I think that's in the end the difference. The only thing is they're fighting against each other, which
So
now they get somewhat closer, that might end up badly. But so far, how far I do dislike the fact that they're not like making big choices. And Zach Brown says, "I rather have not win a title than I have." He said, "I'd rather have Max win a title than having to make a decision between a number one driver or doing team orders." Which
Yeah.
I'm sure he doesn't mean it, but still, that does give a good sentiment. And to be fair, so far the drivers themselves have managed that pretty well.
Yeah, they've raced very well. There were close racing in Imola at one point.
If it makes a difference in the end of the season when they're both fighting for possibly their first and maybe even only world championship, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. it has the potential to sour. It can go the way of Hamilton and Rosberg, who were they were very good friends. Like they grew up racing together, raced ghost karts together, and all the rest of it. So,
Who's Rosberg again?
Sorry,
who's Rosberg again?
Who is Rosberg?
Yeah, you should say he's a Monaco-based YouTuber.
Oh yeah, he is. Yeah, sorry,
there goes my me moment.
Sorry, I missed that one. I forgot about that one. Yeah, that is all working in Max's favour and Red Bull's favour for the drivers' championship, especially if Red Bull do have significant weaknesses at certain tracks that McLaren doesn't have. But we'll just have to see. I just feel like this season it has the potential and currently is a very, very close season. I mean, Max has won 3 races now, has he?
2, I think.
Piastri's won 3 or maybe 4. Lando's won 2 now. Australia and Monaco. So maybe Max has won 2. Piastri's won 3. Lando's won 2.
Yeah.
That would be your 7 races so far.
Yeah.
So that is a formula for a great season so far.
Well, don't get me wrong, it is a great season so far, right?
Yeah, exactly. 3
and
very good drivers.
We're on a third of it. We just started the second, third.
Yeah.
So,
there's a long way to go yet, and anything can happen. And the other thing Max has got in his advantage, he's won 4 of these already. He's not going to get the same nerves that Piastri and Lando are going to get when it comes to potentially winning their first world championship in Formula One, which
we saw Lando break on last year as well. So let's see. I'm looking forward to it. I am very much enthusiastic by the way the season's turning out. This was just a bummer of a weekend, but I'm sure Spain will too. Will make good for that.
Yeah, it's not a great track for overtaking, but it's a great track for
watching
Formula One kind of go fast and seeing the order of things. And then we do have Canada coming up soon, don't we? And Canada is pretty good for racing, so
yes,
that can be. So yeah, we've still got a good season ahead of us, I think.
Oh, for sure. And we have now Canada, Austria, which is also good for racing. Great, of course, UK and Belgium and Hungary, which usually are good tracks. Then we go to the Netherlands, which is going to be a McLaren 1-2. And then we go to Monza, which is going to be interesting as well.
Yeah.
But let's go first into Spain. James.
Yeah.
If you take the S away from Spain, you are left over with pain. And looking at our predictions for this weekend, that is something very close to painful.
Yeah. We're not very good at this, are we? Well, you are.
I was.
Until this weekend.
I was. You said Piastri will take pole. I said Max will take pole. Well, neither did. You said Piastri will win the race. And Lando, of course, did. And I said, I don't know why Russell would win this race. You said Behrman would be the first DNF. And I said, it's going to be Bortoleto, which I thought I had in the pocket. Then he backed up his car and he just drove and took the only overtake in the race. So
managed to find reverse and yeah.
So we got no points. Neither of us.
No.
Do you dare go another round? The current standing is 10 for me and 1 to you.
Wow. Well, the whole 1 point on the board.
Yeah. Who's going to take pole?
Let's get into predictions for Spain.
Who's going to take pole in Spain?
You can go first because I always go first.
Okay. Oh, it's going to be like this now. I'm going to say Max. So.
All right, yeah. It's always a fair shout, is Max, because he's Max, and the
he's good at qualifying.
McLaren advantage doesn't work in qualifying so much. I think
plus this track, Max has he had 1 DNF here, and all other races he has had at least a podium in this track.
Yeah,
including his first win. So
yeah. I am going to go with Piastri for pole, just because. Why not? Piastri's on great form still. He didn't have quite the result at Monaco that he maybe would have liked, but Monaco's such an odd track.
Still
And
third.
I don't know if he got his setup quite dialed in as much as he would have liked either, because
he looked so poor during the weekend. I thought he would start seventh or something. His qualification was good compared to the rest.
Yeah, so much oversteer. There's oversteering a lot, was Piastri in Monaco. So
only one come closing to hitting the wall at turn 1 as well. So.
Yes, yeah. Well, Lando as well, locking up the brakes.
I mean, but he almost oversteered in the wall, Piastri, on a clean lap. So
yeah, a number of times as well. Yeah.
So I was gonna say winning, Max will win, and making this a very interesting week break.
Yeah, I think Max has a good shot, as do both the McLarens.
So you're going to pick Hamilton?
I'm not going to pick Hamilton. It's not a sprint weekend this weekend, is it?
I don't hope so. I doubt Spain is sprint anyway. So
no, I doubt it as well. Let's see if I can quickly find out.
I don't think so.
I'm just going to stick with Piastri. I think generally with the McLarens, obviously it's not sprint weekend, by the way. Obviously, if something goes wrong in the race, then that can mix the grid up any which way, anyway.
But it's Spain, and it's going to be really hot.
Yeah, there's still a chance of a safety car there, isn't there? Because there's some places where there's not a lot of runoff. But I'm just going to stick with Piastri because I feel like McLarens have a good shot of getting pole, and whichever one of them gets pole is probably quite likely to then go on to win the race. So if I'm betting on Piastri for pole, I feel like I have to bet on him for the win. And okay, Monaco wasn't great, but he is on fantastic form. The best we've seen of him so far in his career. And I'm just glad that imagine an alternate universe where he's still racing for Alpine. What a waste of a talent that would have ended up being.
Or we had a Renault engine getting a Formula 1 championship. Or Mercedes engine these days, actually. So never mind that. Actually, James, there's a 50% chance of a safety car. VSC is 25%.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The last full safety car period was in 2021.
Okay, so it's a few years ago now, yeah, and the cars are very reliable, but we've got a lot of rookies on the grid as well, so...
high tire deck, usually. So.
Yeah, safety car, there's a good chance of it. Even if a car, I was going to say, even if a car breaks down, we've just said that reliability is pretty good, but if it does break down, there are points on the track where there's not a lot of runoff, there's not a lot of places to get the car off the track, so... Yeah, maybe we see a safety car and things change. Maybe we see two Mercedes wiping each other out going up into turn 4 or 5, whatever it is.
Two McLarens, you mean?
One of them's in the wrong engine mode now. I was referring to Hamilton.
I know, but that's why I wanted to sound McLaren. That would be nice.
No, I don't want to see that.
Max win another race where the first two just hit each other.
Yeah,
that was awesome. James, who's the first did not finish? So shall I start first again here?
Yeah, you go first again.
Okay. It's going to be... I'm sorry. It's going to be Colapinto.
No.
I like the guy, but so far it's been really poor. It's going to be bluntly
He's not been
honest.
great. To be fair, actually.
He was almost 1.5 seconds off the pace in quali practice all weekend. Last weekend he was dead last, also second of the pace. I mean, you can still come last, but a second of the pace from everyone else, that's a whole lot, James. That's more. He doesn't seem confident yet in the car.
No, he needs a bit of time to get used to the car, I think. I suppose you could have said the same last year, but maybe the car just suited him better when he jumped into that Williams.
Plus, he didn't look slow. Now he actually looks slow, so...
It does a bit, yeah, but
Don't get me wrong, Argentina fans. I know you all hated Max Verstappen this weekend, but I do think the guy has potential, and I really like him. Just don't get me wrong, I really like him. But objectively saying, the last two performances, or his first two, depending on how you look at it, are on the par.
I think that's fair. What I would say is that ordinarily, Imola, you don't really have an excuse. Like, that is a very well-known, well-raced track. He must have experience driving around Imola.
So is Monaco now.
Well, Monaco is also a very challenging and tough track, and maybe he just doesn't get on well with that sort of track. Like, some drivers have bogey tracks, don't they?
But Catalunya should be a good grade.
He's got to do well in Spain, I think. Yeah.
At least on the pace. Even if he finished 20, he can't be that far off.
No. I mean, being far off the pace in Monaco, as far as the race goes, you get stuck in a train and the train's going slow.
No, I was talking qualifying, because he actually did decently in the race. Can't really complain about the race.
I was going to say his race wasn't actually that bad, considering. But yeah, his qualifying wasn't very good. But yeah, let's see how he does in Spain. Hopefully he doesn't DNF, like you just predicted.
Yes, who's going to DNF for you then?
Yeah, getting back to that, I am going to go with Fernando Alonso in Spain.
Oh no. I had a bonus question, Brett, for Fernando Alonso.
All right.
But that's easy then. No, that's easy. Okay, Alonso. Because I said I wanted to get you one bonus point possibility. And that was, does Alonso score points this weekend, yes or no?
I don't want to do a bonus.
Okay, don't do a bonus. All right.
Point system, but I don't think he'll score points. I don't think he'll.
No, because you just predicted him to just DNF again.
I predicted DNF, yeah.
But engine issues, brake issues, unlucky crash. It's not been his most. And last week they had a good weekend, but they botched the strategy on him. He is the unluckiest driver in the world.
Yeah. Don't get me on another Alonso rant.
I know. Yeah, just we could do a social media thing about that.
Let's wrap up before I start ranting about him again.
All right.
And his luck.
Awesome. Well, let's just do that. James, Spain this weekend. Let's hope it's going to be amazing again. Like sitting on the edge of the seat, Formula One watch. Let's forget about Monaco, but it's a good thing we discussed some of these highlights or, well, sort of nightmare points in this race.
Yeah. Qualifying was amazing. Best qualifying I have possibly ever seen.
Well, not ever, because I think that's the one where Max hit the wall twice and still got pole position.
Well, you're a Max fan, so you're biased.
Even if it wasn't biased, that was one heck of a lap, though.
Leclerc setting a phenomenal lap in a Ferrari, only to then be pipped by Lando, setting probably the best lap of his life, was thrilling. And it was all within, the top three were within like 6 100ths of each other or something.
Which,
it was insane.
Yeah. Well, if it's first or second on my list, it doesn't matter that much. I also like Suzuka this year a lot. I also did like Imola a lot. Qualifications are just brilliant to watch these days because the cars are so fast and so close together. There's never been a tenth between number 1 and 2 yet.
Yeah,
more than a tenth. So, I mean, that says something about heating. And I think the difference was 0.034 last week. So it's when we're talking about thousands of a seconds difference between two cars going 300 kilometers an hour, you know how close the margins are. So
yeah,
qualification is definitely awesome. Plus the views were awesome. I saw my new boat laying around there, so that was nice. Just didn't get the keys yet.
I'm the same with my penthouse suite there.
Yeah. If you, by the way, want to record a podcast next year on a boat, we'll be happy to bring all the gear along. And, well, I said boat, I mean ship. We'll gladly do one on board of a ship.
Yeah, we can't call it a boat.
No, so
or I just get some random fisherman inviting us to just like. I can't use the harbour this weekend because Formula One, but we can record the podcast from about 3 miles out at sea.
Yes. Also, I'm not thinking that was a good idea, knowing how you do well amongst standing water.
No, we learned that I can suffer from a bit of Motion sickness.
Yeah. So, but in the harbor, we should be fine. Should be not be as much waves, I think.
Yeah.
Also,
should be
maybe just don't let me drive. That might help as well. Sorry about that. Once again, that was one of our adventures on Crete, by the way. Thank you so much for listening to the show. We appreciate you, and we hope you appreciate us doing this every week. If you do so, let us know. Give us a comment somewhere on YouTube or Spotify. We can now also have a new feature on Spotify, which is live chat. So if you send us a message, we can respond to that message and can actually get conversations going directly on the Spotify app. So thank you, Spotify, for granting us that feature. And if you want to let us know there's something, just leave it as a note on Spotify, and we'll even be able to respond back to it now. So that's pretty cool. Thank you so much, James. See you next week.
Absolutely.
And well, that's it for me. Bye-bye.
Bye.